Good afternoon. This place is called Gap Wells. It's along the old Butterfield stagecoach route where it cut through the pass in the Maricopa Mountains. And we're going to talk about an anime.
Tales from Earthsea.
Tales from Earthsea, or Gedo Senki, is a 2007 fantasy anime from Studio Ghibli. It's directed by Goro Miyazaki, son of studio founder and anime giant Hayao Miyazaki. It's loosely based on the Earthsea novels and short stories of Ursula K. Le Guin. The anime hasn't been released in the US yet, but I bought the import DVD from Japan several years ago with high hopes. That import even has the Disney dub soundtrack on it. Let me say at the start that I'm a really big fan of Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea novels. There aren't many sci-fi fantasy novels that I've read more than once. It's impossible for me to discuss the movie separately from those novels. I was tempted to start here with a philippic, but let me start instead by explaining what the movie's about, and then I'll make some comparisons to the books as I go along, in case anyone out there reads them. Earthsea is a fantasy world that's all archipelago. Island nations of feudal technology and magic. Earthsea magic is based on the true names of things. In addition to their common name, most people also have a secret true name, which they share only with those that they trust completely. The movie begins with Aaron, a young prince of one of the larger islands of Earthsea. He's cursed with a split personality, with a dark, violent, and irrational side to him, and so he's on the run, so to speak. Traveling alone through the desert wilderness, he luckily runs into a mage, Sparrowhawk, who happens to be the archmage of Roke himself. Sparrowhawk is searching for the cause of some great malaise that's afflicting the lands. Disease is spreading, crops are failing, dragons from the west have been sighted in the skies, and wizards are losing their power. Sparrowhawk's true name is Ged, by the way, which explains the Japanese title, but shh, it's supposed to be a secret. The two start traveling together, Sparrowhawk because he doesn't believe in coincidences, and Aaron because he has nothing better planned. Together, Sparrowhawk and Aaron stroll into Hort, one of Earthsea's biggest cities. Hort isn't such a pleasant place either. Soporific drugs are commonplace, and apparently slavers can pick up anyone they want off the streets. Still, it's a very big city. A powerful local wizard, Cobb, seems to be the area's bad boy, and he dresses the part. Sparrowhawk knows him from somewhere in the past. Cobb has anticipated the Archmage's arrival and has his small army out searching for the wizard. Meanwhile, Aaron soon runs afoul of Cobb's slavers. After leaving Hort, Sparrowhawk leads Aaron to the farmhouse of his old friend Tanar. It's been years since Tanar and Sparrowhawk last met, and since then Tanar has taken in an abandoned child, Teru. Teru has a bright burn scar on her face and is unnaturally quiet and very shy of strangers. The foursome will hang around the farm for a while, plowing the fields and tending the sheep. The movie is very slow getting started. There are several seemingly unrelated events, but they don't start converging onto an actual storyline in the first hour. I think that's because the movie never really explains what the crisis is. So we have first one, then two, then four protagonists with no obvious problems they're intent on resolving. It's like a sightseeing trip. Sparrowhawk is supposed to be looking for the source of some magical malaise, but his search is very relaxed and easygoing. It's not visible to the viewer, so it's easy to forget about. Aaron is supposedly trying to purge his murderous inner demon, which we've only seen the once at the opening. And we have no idea how he can accomplish that anyway. It's unusual to see a movie with a story so unfocused that by the midpoint we'd be hard-pressed to say what any of the protagonists is trying to do, which is why they can sail lazily into bucolic farm life. This is the most consistently serious story from Studio Ghibli since Princess Mononoke. There's none of the charm, humor, or sense of wonder that'll leave in Howl's Moving Castle or Spirited Away. It refuses to settle in on a single star. All that might be fine if the characters were actually doing something interesting. In the tradition of an old Western, the conflict doesn't start until the bad guy strikes first, and we're over halfway through the movie by then. But once the story does get moving, it drives pretty well to its dramatic climax.
What could that be?
Get out of here! Get out of here now!
You're looking very well, boy. I just want a word or two with your wizard friend.
Get back. Sparrowhawk's not here.
As I said, I'm a fan of the Earthsea books. Based on the title, I expected Ghibli's Tales of Earthsea movie would be an adaptation of one or more of the short stories of Le Guin's own Tales from Earthsea collection. In fact, that's one of the few Earthsea books the movie doesn't borrow from. It's mostly a mishmash of ideas and characters from 4 of the novels. Fans of Le Guin's Earthsea novels will recognize Sparrowhawk and Aaron's search for some source of a disruption in magic as something like the setup for the 3rd novel of the original trilogy, The Farthest Shore, except for the part about Aaron's dark side, which seems to have been inspired by Sparrowhawk's own Gebeth from the 1st novel, A Wizard of Earthsea. Tanar is the former priestess of the Nameless Ones from the Tombs of Atuan. In the anime, she'll credit Sparrowhawk with leading her out of the tombs. In this animated movie, she and her adopted daughter come from the novel Teanu. By the way, that book disfigured Teru far more cruelly than this movie has. It took away one eye and the use of one hand, as well as the burn on her face. But apparently the tragically maimed don't make winsome heroines in Ghibli land. Lastly, the movie's big climax borrows from The Farthest Shore. Fans of the books will wonder how these stories from these novels will coexist, given the warp of their time frames. Well, they really don't. Goro Miyazaki, who's credited with the anime's screenplay and storyboards as well as directing, follows the dark path the Sci-Fi Channel trampled a couple years earlier by making up a new story for the characters. Cobb will fill in for the villain for all these stories. Is there some reason a movie can't be made from a single Earthsea book? Actually, I suspect there is, and I suspect it has to do with the production values of not having both a male and a female character together in the same novel. Fans of the books will also be disappointed that Sparrowhawk does all his traveling on land in this movie. Even though a couple of the novels take place in a single location, Sparrowhawk sailing among Earthsea's islands on his boat, the Lookfar, is one of the novel's more enduring images. Here, the Lookfar gets only a cameo appearance as Ged beaches it and comes ashore early on. I didn't expect perfect fidelity to Le Guin's writings, but I did expect something a little more coherent. Okay, enough of the books. Let me get back to the movie. Much of the artwork is rich and detailed as you'd expect from a Studio Ghibli film. The entry into Hort has as much detail and background action as Kiki's first visit to her own big city. The backgrounds in Hort are all exceptionally well painted, from the fountains to the marketplace. It's all a bit unimaginative, perhaps, being a generic medieval fantasy city without any particular distinction to make it Earthsea, but it's beautifully drawn nonetheless. Most of the rural scenes in and around Tanar's farm are also pretty decently done. But then there are a few scenes that look rather plain and rushed, such as some rather bland desertscapes and some wind-in-the-grass shots. Sometimes we have this tree, and sometimes we have this tree. Sometimes we have some nicely detailed water, and sometimes some very bland water. I wonder if net video allows you to spot the difference in these images I'm showing. There's a fire in one scene. It's a very important fire, but I won't show it to you since it's at the conclusion. But it's very unimpressive, rather stock CGI superimposed over the drawing. Lastly, I thought Cobb's representation at the very end was uninspiring and disappointing, a sort of generic evil black ooze sort of thing. None of this would be out of place in a lesser studio's project, but I set the bar pretty high for a Studio Ghibli theatrical film, so much of it disappointed me. The characters are designed in the distinctly Ghibli style, and they're just fine. Is it a house rule that every character must have at least one scene where they look like Nausicaa? And what is it with blue tunics? Ghibli's favorite composer, Joe Hisaishi, passed on this one. Tamiya Terashima's music is solid, though, and complements the movie very well. As with his other soundtracks, the score is great at delivering sweeping orchestral themes. The Japanese R2 DVD was nice enough to include the Disney dub soundtrack, and it's pretty good, though the import soundtrack lacks surround sound. Timothy Dalton is pretty good as Sparrowhawk, what the Gravis one expects from an Archmage. I'm not sure what William Dafoe is doing with Cobb, but Cheech Marin seems to be having a lot of fun as his henchman. All in all, it's a very pleasant to watch it in English, a fine Disney production. I give Tales from Earthsea 3.5 stars. It's nice to look at, but it's just too bland and lifeless a story, and it fails to deliver any winsome characters to engage my interest. It's my least favorite Studio Ghibli movie. It should be out from Disney's Buena Vista label later this year. Eventually, the Sci-Fi Channel's exclusive license to Earthsea has to expire. If it shows up in a local theater, I'll probably go see it again just for the big screen experience.
Thanks for listening.